Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's Evolve webinar brought to you by our good friends Max. Today's topic is reviewing facilities and layout for permanent social distancing. And it's an interesting topic and one that I think we need to be thinking about more and more as we move forward in this COVID crisis. We have three excellent presenters for you today. And I'll explain who each of them are, and then I'll introduce them one at a time. But before I do that, I'll remind you that at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A box. So if you have any questions to ask any of the presenters, please use that Q&A box to type your question. And at the end of each person's presentation, I will relay to them the question and encourage people to discuss that, the answers and etc. So please make sure you make use of the Q&A box. It's there for you to be able to get more information if there is information that you require. So today's presentation, we have three presenters. Lindsay Verdon, who's the head of hospitality venues for our partner company, Painter Dixon Construction. And there probably isn't anybody that knows more about hospitality facilities in this country than Lindsay Verdon, so I'll be introducing him shortly. Second, we have Daniel Dixon, who is the CEO of Fat Sourcing, a major furniture supplier for the industry, well known throughout the industry, and he will be talking about the way in which we can use furniture and fittings to create better spaces. And we have the operations manager for Cabravale Diggers, Andrew Davis, who is also going to be presenting, talking about what actually he and his club have done to achieve the social distancing requirements. Now, the reason we picked this topic this week is because as this crisis evolves, this pandemic evolves, I think it's becoming clear to all of us that social distancing is going to become a permanent feature of our lives, at least for the next few years. Because even though regulations may change in 18 months' time, our customers are still going to actually want to enjoy the extra space that they've had will have had for the last couple of years. And I think our patrons will feel safer and better coming to our venues if there is that space between us. So we can't just think of the social distancing as a temporary thing and it'll all be over by Christmas and we can go back to the normal, because I think there will be a new normal. And that's why I thought it was important for us today to discuss what we can achieve and how we need to be building our venues to be much more flexible in the way in which the facilities are arranged, the furniture is arranged, and the access is arranged within our venues. And to that mind, I would like to now introduce Lindsay Verdon. As I said, Lindsay is well known to many of you in the industry, has enormous experience in facilities, both across Australia and internationally, and has worked for many years with Painter Dixon and has worked with many of our venues across New South Wales. So I'm delighted to welcome Lindsay to speak. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks, Gary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks, everyone. The time is probably right for all of this. We've had a few months to get aware of what our clubs are looking like momentarily. And it's fair to say, as Gary has said, that the rules change quite frequently, but we seem to have some static rules at the moment, and we need to understand those rules and be aware that they may change. And I've always said that good club design is a flexible design and something that can, from time to time, imitate what the customer needs. So if ever there's a time to imitate what the customer needs, it's today. And it's certainly very difficult. It's very difficult out there. It's very difficult. I'm in Port Macquarie at the moment, and I know that New South Wales country is so much different than the city. And I've had some experiences in both those areas of recent times, and the feelings are entirely different. But first up, before we start talking, or I start talking about where I think we can go, we need to understand your buildings. And that's one of the first criteria that everyone needs to be aware of. Your buildings, whether they be new or old, renovated recently or for sometimes, or not for sometimes, are all designed and they have to comply under what they call the Building Code of Australia. I'm sure you're all aware of that, aptly named the BCA. Now, whatever we do in our clubs, however we react to the moment that we're in, and I think smoking is probably the last one that we had to react to that was a fairly dominant thing. We have to make sure our building complies. And I've heard many people say to me, oh, look, we'll build a wall and we'll close off half the club and we'll do this and we'll do that. Well, keep in mind, everyone, that your building must comply under the BCA. And that's not purposes of people walking into the building, but it's for the purposes of people getting out of the building in case of fire or other catastrophes. So there is always an issue to do with those. And it's very, very important that you understand them. And it's very important that you react design-wise to those requirements of the building. And they don't only do with exits and doorways, they do with mechanical ventilation, they do with lighting, and they do with just comfort of people in the general space. The next most important thing that I think, and I've been looking at the social distancing rules and I've been looking at everything else that comes out, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's one person per 2 square metres or one person per 4 square metres. We've designed buildings for basically for one person is to 1.2, 1.5 square metres. So literally the two most important numbers that you need to relate to is the 1.5 social distancing, which Gary's correct, we're all becoming aware of, whether we're in the building or walking down the street, or for that matter, the total number of people permissible in your venue. And the next most important thing that I think we all need to get aware of is when we calculate spaces, in other words, a foyer, a lounge, a sports bar, a bistro, we don't calculate what they call circulation space. And that is where people are walking and generally not stopping. And then more importantly, in this instant now, we don't want people stopping in corridors and having a chat. You'll be asked to move on. So when you do your analysis of floor spaces, do your analysis on the basis of those areas. Now, moving forward and thinking about maybe the next 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years, if it's going to be around for that long, we need to start determining what we classify as the lounge space as opposed to the circulation space to get me around. I know Daniel will talk to you in a little while about furnishings, but interiors and furnishings and changes of finishes on floors can actually allow us to understand what a space looks like. To me, I think we can't lose sight of the fact that we've worked very hard in the last number of years to create this beautiful ambience and experience when people come to the club. And what we don't want to have to do is go back to, Gary said so nicely yesterday, the old mess hall. We do not want to create the mess hall. We've got to keep that wonderful feeling of atmosphere in the club up. So for me, there's 3 main areas that I think you need to look at. And I'll deal with 3 and I'll let Daniel and I'll let Andrew deal with some other spaces. Firstly, the front door. I don't know wherever you've been of late, but I know I feel comfortable when I walk into a building and the front door greets me and it deals with COVID-19 correctly. But keep in mind, please, that the front door is a transit zone. It's a corridor. It's a circulation space. So it's very, very important to have your front door designed so that it can accommodate people. There's nothing worse than having them queued up outside in the fresh air and the cold air. Some of the photos you see roll behind me at the moment, some of the finishes were just, some of the projects were finished at Parramatta and also Pittwater. And that's to sort of translate that information to you about ambience. The next most important area that I see that I think we've all got to deal with is the gaming room. We all know gaming rooms are going very well at the moment. There's reasons for that, and let's hope that it continues. But in that photograph there, you can see those poker machines are spaced out fairly well. And we have to be aware, ladies and gentlemen, that when we talk about spacing and allocation of space, and you can see that those 3 poker machines have 3 chairs in front of them, in front of each one of them, you have to have this distance separation of 1.5 metres around everyone. But it has to be like the hula hoop. It has to be in every single direction. And lots of times we forget about the person sitting behind us, and in some cases, the person sitting in front of us. Now, I think it's IGT have just released a new compliance about how they can turn machines on and off. And I know Andrew will probably be able to talk about that a little bit himself. But you just need to look at these gaming rooms properly. If this is the hub, the engine room of our business for the next 2 to 3 years, it can't be thought about momentarily. It has to be thought about positively over that period of time. I think nothing looks worse than the brown paper bag hanging over the top of the poker machine in between two others. It doesn't look good. Take the thing away, dress the space up properly, allow the space to be itself as it used to be, and let people know that you care about them when they walk into the gaming room. Probably the most difficult areas for all of us to deal with, and they're going to be very difficult to deal with, are going to be the food and beverage areas and the bars. Bars are the sort of things that we might have to close some down and just operate out of one or two, but they are the areas that we can see most people getting up and moving around. So please, the idea of that is to make sure you separate the furniture properly and you create the areas for people to sit in. When it comes to food and beverage, or when it comes to food, at the moment I was reading a report the other day on shopping centres and the food court design. If ever there's a drama, it's a food court in a shopping centre. And they're going to now be starting to set some examples of how they want to space things out, which Daniel can talk to you about. But more importantly, they're starting to talk about this transition space between where people have got to move to and from. And I think we're going to find that we all know that the buffets had it. We all know that possibly that we've got to be closer to the kitchen, closer to the bar and be able to see it. But I also think we might have lost sight of the fact that the old Bain Marie and the old bistro line, that's just as big a problem as a buffet is. So there's going to be some dramatic changes that we've got to adopt, I should say, and adjust to. Personally, let's not lose sight of the ambience that we've created, that we are creating. That bar is a fabulous bar. It's a one-off bar on the floor of Parramatta RSL. There is no other bar. So I think if we can all just stop worrying so much, and I know it's easy to say, but stop worrying, but let people who know what they're talking about have a good look at your footprint, have a good look at your plans. But I think momentarily, and maybe Andrew can say this, does the club need to open up every venue that it's had over the last umpteen years? Possibly not. Maybe you've got to selectively open and keep things under control and grow with it. So Gary, I can answer a lot of questions and I can see a lot of things happening, but I think the number one is to make sure that you don't do things falsely by creating other problems. And the other problems are making sure or causing your building to not react the way in which it should with all these people inside. Thanks very much, Gary.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's very well said. And yes, I mean, some of the photos that you've provided here aren't social distancing.
No.
They are where we need to make further changes. And I think Andrew will be able to, in his presentation, show us how they've actually achieved the social distancing across various elements of their venue. But now who I'd like to introduce is our good friend Daniel Dixon from Fat Sourcing. As many of you will know, Daniel is one of the best suppliers of furniture in the industry and has some very creative and great solutions for all venues. So welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Brad. Thanks for putting this on. Obviously, quite a reactive topic, but one very important right now. And I think, as Lindsay was just saying, keeping that flexibility and versatility in your venue doesn't always come from moving walls or putting sort of stopgaps up what you think the new rules are, because I think they change daily. And unfortunately, I don't think the club industry or the hospitality industry was given enough time to make changes. They were very quick to shut down, but at the same time weren't given that time to speed up. So I think that's been a challenge. I like to look at things slightly differently because I like to look at COVID's gifts that it's given us versus the things that it's taken away. We've got to be challenged, and in your roles of running venues, your F&B, your gaming, all these places under attack. And although gaming might be performing well now, you know, what's to come of that? What's the next thing there? The one thing I'd say, you've got the versatility. Your ability to change your floor around comes from your furniture. Also, you'll find that over time, you're going to become more creative. Lindsay called it the mess hall, which I think is fantastic. The old sea of furniture that clubs used to be. The same chair everywhere in case we need to move to a room where people sit is just gone are the days. I'm going to show you some photos in a second. Where there's examples of social distancing, I want to show you items that will be in your club that you can use for versatility to create those changes that you need. Before I get into that, I just want to touch on a few things that we've seen people have two very, very different views. At the moment, my God, boards are stopping, no spending, don't do anything. And some other people are putting the pedal down and seeing this as an opportunity to move with the times. I do share Lindsay's feelings of let's not react, let's do things and work with things so we understand exactly. If our government can't tell us exactly what's going on, let's not react. So some of the stopgaps I've got for you will be nice, easy, cheap fixes, and in some cases gives you a chance to plan and change your venue around. Pre-COVID, there was actually a very big trend for the last 5 years of creating intimate spaces. So that's not just COVID. Creating small, intimate spaces that look and feel their own. Around the corner, there's a totally different offering. That's high bars down to low coffee lounges area versus dining, sort of into transition drinking areas. That's been around for a long time. So I would like to think that most clubs have the ability to be versatile in this transition. And I think you can play around with some things. Some other great pieces of not necessarily furniture, but screening, planter boxes, etc. You can start to move people through your venue in a way that you want by doing it with a nice, stylish way. So, and I'll show you some of those in a second. But what I'd like to challenge you on is think about when you're going through your furniture selections, whether it's now and you've just done a fit out or you're due to do one, think about staging it. Don't necessarily just think of that one master plan, the whole club's being done now. If you're looking at staging things, you've got the ability to be flexible and versatile in your approach. And I also think as we start to work through some of the photos, you'll see also people's materials they start to choose has changed in the last 10 years. Everything used to be fabric. Now you get a lot more of the faux leathers, the vinyls. They are easy to clean. Saying that, patrons misuse furniture, whether it's vinyl or whether it's fabric. Some of these durabilities on these things is really important to look for. So when you're discussing with your designers, I wouldn't just take only the gospel truth. The colors, the look and the feel is what they'll decide on. I would encourage you to challenge the thought process of your designer or furniture partner to make sure that we're doing things that are functional usage fabrics, vinyls, leathers, etc. So we don't have to just accept what's put forward. Maybe the color palette, yes, but you want to make sure things are white ball, easy to clean. I'm a big fan of, you look at these sort of seats here. I make all of our seats now with removable seats because whether someone urinates themselves, whether it's a cigarette burn or whatever happens, you need to be able to not throw out that $500 piece of furniture for a $75 fix on a seat. So I always make sure we do functional furniture selections. And you'll notice from this here, you've got the beautiful booth seating in the background. You've got chairs here, and separating that is these little ottomans. Ottomans are great because you can use them as seating. You can use them as a division of space. You can also use some of those, patrons will use them for tables. So there really is the great ability to use some of your furniture items to define the areas that you want. This here is a good example. I was at a Tweed Heads club the other day, and they had their tall bars, or what's commonly known as the table of knowledge. What they did is they know that you don't want two men standing at these tables. So what they did is they took away the middle tables, pushed them together, and you still had two men either side and two at the ends, and you've got your 6 or 8 people. Again, the versatility in using what you've already got to create your client comfort. Lindsay said it a few times, and I think the peace of mind from your people is also about how you're creating comfort, so things aren't so different for them. The check-in process is already different. They're now getting scanned for temperature. They're leaving their phone number. They're checking in. They're checking out. You've got to try and demystify some of the weirdness around this world and create seamless areas. And when they come into your club, if you can not just have the marshal's vest on so they feel like this is all very official, create the spaces they're used to, but obviously have the social distancing process in place. So I think functional furniture selection is really important. And often you can find with your floor, you can actually change things around with a $20,000 or $30,000 uplift and have a completely different look and feel. Reupholstering, we do reupholstering a lot of the time, but I think a lot of time reupholstering is seen as that furniture should last for a lot longer. Well, my point to you is often you'll spend the same amount of money and time on reupholstering things back and forth to the upholsterer's back than a new piece of furniture. So don't be just governed by your register. Obviously, your asset register is very, very important to make sure you're depreciating items, but look at your venue and ensuring that things are being uplifted and people feel great about coming to their club. It's a great photo, Lindsay's first one. Here's your club. I think you've got to keep that in mind. And there's the governing parameters. There's also the comfort parameters of the people that keep you guys employed and keep your business going. Flexibility comes into it really well. So this is a good example here of flexibility. If we had round tables here, we wouldn't be able to do what that club did the other week and join them together. If we had tables that were 800 wide and just over here we had 700 wide tables, we couldn't push those together. If we had an 800 wide table and an 800 diameter table, they wouldn't go together. So functional furniture selection and versatility comes into ensuring that if we wanted this room to have 10 different layouts, what are we doing there to make this functional area have the ability to adapt to what we need it to be? Do we need to do wake small christenings in here? And if that's the case, can we move these 180 kilo tables out of here? Oh, we should have thought about that. So the weight of a table, the base of a table. Often I find from an uplift of a venue, your bases are made out of steel. They're not going anywhere. They're not even seen when chairs and tables. So when chairs are around there, put new tabletops on them. Save yourself a couple $100 in your base. Okay, so you can stage these things through to make it work for you. A great example here of how certain items of furniture can create divisions. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the booth seating against the wall with coffee tables brought in and a couple of long booth seats, creating a nice intimate space with good social distancing. On the right-hand side, I've got photos here of a lounge that's creating a division and getting two different nooks, little intimate spaces with different furniture items to create one area here and one area here with the lounge being the division. So there's many different versatile ways you can do it. And the old days of the sea of furniture didn't allow you to do that. And so a lot of the time now people are bringing in, this probably, by the way, is the extreme. This is Collegiate's Rugby League Cup down in Wollongong. And this, when we did this job, there's barely 2 items that aren't the same. So there might be 4 or 5. There's 150 items here and they're all different. But you'll see how from the usage of furniture, how you can create divisions and again, intimate spaces, which is where the industry is going. Probably for the last 6 or 7 years, Lindsay will agree with that the whole trend has moved to creating these intimate spaces where people feel they can have their own little gatherings. Okay, here you've got more of the sea of furniture, but this is also then brought in with some nice sort of booth and banquet seating on the side that has the ability to divide off or to create a longer table. So again, you need these, the older traditional style places that can accommodate a lot of people. As you start to take some tables out, it doesn't look like it here, but they are set for social distancing, just the image positioning is probably not right. And as you need to sort of declutter some of these areas, the positioning and angle of your table can actually make a difference. Having things on a diamond versus front on gives you the ability to create a different look and feel versus that whole sea of furniture. This is the gorgeous DYRSL, recently renovated the Battery House. And there's a room here that has so much versatility, but what I want you to look at is the item of furniture here on the right-hand side is one chair that in the next shot, and I'll come back to, is the same chair in a different fabric. Okay, so creating some uniformity throughout your place and allowing people to still feel that this is flowing and free can sometimes take place in an item of furniture that is reverse colored or different furniture pieces. Again, you've got the ability here for this mobile lounge to come around the other side and create an intimate nook of 4 people. You've got an ottoman or a table here that can be brought in as a resting table for a chair. And suddenly you've got a 6 or 8 person area that is very versatile that can be moved around by the day staff. I brought this up for a reason. This table here is actually the one I'm sitting at right now. And this is a gorgeous 2.4 meter table. The picture probably doesn't lend itself to that. But you know, you've now got the challenge of intending to have 8 to 10 people at this table. And now you may have 6 people as a maximum. So again, losing some furniture, but making people still feel connected might be around positioning chairs at the end of tables and creating 2 little spaces versus one big long table of knowledge, as I said. Again, when you've got your lounge areas, your ability to move furniture around, the benefit of loose furniture and screening is you can change it daily if you need to, okay? Now this is Forestville RSL, when they did this a few years ago, they actually started to create some areas that were not highly used. When they asked the members, it was all about, I feel like it's too open. There was a lounge along the back here and it was just a nothing area. These smaller intimate spaces are lending themselves now to social distancing, but they are also in line with what we need. It's in line with what the club can do tomorrow with their furniture layouts. Last minute or so. So here we've got the ability to take out tables and chairs to give more space around. You will note that there is different items of furniture that is also interchangeable. So I think I was going to touch on gaming for 1 second. You'll see, oh, sorry, this is another good point. These here are large lounges with the planter box in between, definitely to create divides. Okay, and I know these here are not too difficult to come by. You would go back to your floor and be critical of where are my spaces, where are my intimate spaces, and how are my people flowing around. The big thing with gaming, I've seen a couple of creative people, as Lindsay said, the big brown paper bag is just so unattractive. One thing I've seen is, and I know you do incur the CMS fee here once a machine is on and being played, some people have just had holds on machines and allow the punters to actually choose which machine they want to play. And then they move the screens around, the signs around on the screen, depending on which machine they wanted to play. And that's been a huge benefit for the player, not feeling that they've been dictated to on what to play. Some people have also moved chairs off the floor to give that space. But again, the machine's been on just with a screen over the top of it to make sure they understand you've got to ask the host if you want to play that game. But I've seen that's quite a good option, and allowing the patron to actually choose their way around the floor. My final things I'll say is, look, staging your furniture layouts can actually help you in the COVID time. I agree it's not going away in a hurry, but the need for intimate spaces has been on the design plan for a very long time. Maybe look at your floor and you might have to do certain areas. We're more than happy to speak to people about suggestions just on feedback. But at the end of the day, one adjustment we've had to make, you people don't feel your asset-rich business and potentially cash poor sometimes has been able to sort of prosper and develop and refurbish in these times. One of the things we've done is created flexible payment plans so people can allow to do fit outs now and pay them over time. So I think you've got to think, what am I doing in today's environment to work with my patrons to allow them to feel comfortable in the place that we're providing? And I think furniture is a really versatile way for you to do that. Thank you.
Excellent, Daniel. Thank you very much. As you could hear from Daniel Lee, there isn't anybody in the industry that knows as much as Daniel about furniture. So please give him a call. And I'll be putting up the contact details of all our presenters at the end of the presentation. But thanks very much, Daniel. Now, Andrew Davis is the operations manager of one of our more successful clubs, Cabervale Diggers, who also operates Campbelltown RSL Club. And they were very organised and were, in fact, probably ahead of the game back in June when they were able to reopen, because they had done some work already. And I'll let Andrew talk about that. But it's great to have somebody from a venue who's actually been living this and delivering on these requirements for social distancing. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Gary. A bit of a hard act to follow after those two presenters. I'm a long-time Zoom watcher and a first-time presenter, so bear with me. I guess basically I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we got to where we are today, especially with social distancing. This presentation really looks at examples of what we did to social distance our business, focusing on gaming. I guess each venue, for all the people out there watching today, this will have varying levels of application. But I hope you get something out of it, because I basically do talk about how some of these things that we've managed to change our business were quite a nominal cost. I'll also show you the other side of the spectrum where, when you do have, I guess, some money in the bank, what can you do? I guess 1st of June came along and basically upheaved our whole world. We had to deal with shutting the club with very little notice and informing, for us, 285 staff that please don't come to work tomorrow. So that was quite a horrible task. And once we got past that, the first question we asked is, well, what are we going to do? When they do turn around and say that we can open up, how are we going to be ready for that? So we basically, in relation in gaming, we knew we had to I guess take the best guess about social distancing our game machines, and it was a no-brainer. Regarding what we knew then, and kind of how it would impact other operations like catering and beverage, we felt comfortable that there was going to be a reduced capacity and we could live with that, at least in the short term. But we weren't very comfortable with losing, we have 450 machines, and to lose half them, we just weren't comfortable with that. I guess, so then in that period where we were shut down, we really had to make decisions, and there was a bit of a risk. We didn't know, if the restrictions are going to change, and we did all this work and to find out later on that would be nothing. However, I guess that's what I wanted to show the next couple of slides is we did actually decide to space out our machines. There was a cost involved. We looked at those costs very carefully, and yeah, we ran the risk, I guess, and it kind of we saw the results. The one thing that was a bit different for us is that we had to apply to increase our restricted area. We've done this a number of times in the past and had no issue. However, with this application, we did get a bit of pushback from council. A little bit after that, I think actually a media got hold of, and basically there was an article came out and specifically named our LGA and other clubs in our area, and basically name and shame them for increasing their gaming areas. They were taking them from catering areas or other part of the club footprint. We luckily got in just before all that. So another thing about, you know, taking the risk and getting an application early, we kind of escaped that, but it wasn't great for the area. And I don't know what your council's like, whether they've got an anti-gaming kind of approach, but you know, any restrictions now in increasing our restricted area, we're going to be very cautious with, and I guess really have a strong argument to just get council off our back. So I guess I want to first talk about reclaiming or using dead space. In this first picture, this was actually a lounge area, a bar lounge. We had some bench seating, lounges, a couple of keynote TVs. Wasn't really, you know, a great utilized space. Probably a lot of our bar flies would hang around here, water drinkers, maybe trying to grab a free coffee. So that was an easy decision, all right? Remove some furniture, talk to our power and data guys, get them to come in and set it up, and basically we just move these machines. Being model terminals, they're extremely important to us. We only have 67, so it was the first thing we looked at. We needed to have all 67 running, and we weren't going to with the current restrictions of our installation. So again, probably not the prettiest. There's probably issues with it. As we progress forward, we like to fix up the spacing between multi-terminals. But minimal cost, power and data. Yes, you might also need to have the right person in terms of whether it be Aristocrat or whatever to actually have your technicians to come in and move the machines. But not really a hard decision for us in terms of stacking up the numbers. I will add though that we did have to buy some TVs, but yeah, ideally not a great area. It's narrow, but it works, and it's actually proven quite popular. The next is the bowls lounge. So, when COVID came along, I guess a lot of those sacred cows came up for grabs. So yeah, the bowlers, lost their actual lounge. So again, very easy for us, move a lot of trestle tables and chairs, find a new home for our bowlers, which is on the other side of the club, and put in a new configuration of poke machines that we've never really done before. These are a little bit more of a pod style, so a bit odd in terms of how they are positioned, but allowed us to really maximize the space. If you can see in some of the pictures, it's not an ideal room. It's got a lot of sun coming in. It's north facing, so that's something we're gonna have to solve with either spending a little bit of money on blinds, tinting, or something to that effect. Also, things we learned, we rushed in and we put these machines maximizing floor space, but didn't work with air conditioning vents and glare coming from LED lightings. Smaller problems, but again, something we can address for very minimal costs. Not great pictures, sorry about that, but this is out in our Alfresco area. Now, we had, the Alfresco area originally was about half the size. It doesn't really convey well in these pictures as there are a few dividers put out throughout the room. But, if we talk about significant cost, this was huge. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually make an Alfresco area. Would we have done it just for COVID and social distancing? No, but we were able to relook at our future building programs and accelerate one because we knew we were going to run out of space. And fortunately, when we had our future plans to build a hotel, we knew we were going to lose part of our north Alfresco area, another part of the club. So yeah, these plans were developed, but really when COVID came along, we had to make the decision: do we accelerate it along, well, yes, and it's actually worked out really well for us. You know, we wouldn't have as many machines out in smoking areas, and it's still important for a lot of our customers to be able to have that option. So again, an example where you can spend a lot of money, but you know, make it work for yourself, make it strategic, make it so it lasts for you for the long term. All the other costs are basically the same. Power and data. The only one thing that's probably becoming more apparent in some of these other pictures is the unexpected issues we had with trying to achieve or find poker machine bases. So when 1st of June came down and everything was shut down, well, a lot of our suppliers weren't available, or they're operating at a reduced capacity. So we needed about 200 bases for what we planned to fully you know, build out our installation. So all our machines had that spacing. Eventually we found someone, we ended up building them ourselves. You know, they came flat packed, we built them, got a team together, and we managed to actually do it in a timely fashion, which probably will come more important in a few more slides when I talk about timelines. The one thing I wish I did include in some of these images is what the other guys are talking about, is make it look nice, or make it look presentable. Our game machines are all socially distanced, but it does make it look like a half cut down forest in some regards. So, you know, we've actually got a little bit creative, and we've been trialing having just, you know, basically bigger than A1 size promotions or marketing material going in between each of these machines. It breaks it up and makes it a little bit nicer. Unfortunately, sorry, I don't think I included any of those pictures today. Then we have probably our least favorite modification we've done. This is a lobby restaurant. So originally shut down 15 years ago. So I didn't even know what it looked like when I was in operation. I've only been with the club for 10 years. But basically for 15 years, this sat on the first floor doing absolutely nothing. So, you know, basically it's probably the best example of dead space. We managed to basically, yeah, take this room, put poker machine bases, put poker machines on them, and install some power and data. Now, it goes against probably most things that we would consider anti-gaming. It's on the first floor. It's an isolated area. It's sunken lounge. It's got, you know, again, north-facing windows with sun come blaring in, and it looks tacky and old. But for us, you know, we had to make that decision. For a minimal cost, we could get another 37 machines on the floor, and it does allow us to do some testing. You know, we are in different times. We want to try some different things. How would our players react to having to move up to the first floor? What does that mean for us if we have some future development or other issues we want to look into? So we are using a bit of a test bed. It's only been open since last Wednesday. So it will be a slow burn for us. And if anything, we think we can learn a bit from it. I guess I just talk about timeline in regards to gaming, is that in that shutdown period, you know, when there was the risk of making mistakes with what we were going to do with social distancing, specifically our game machines, the end result was that we were able to get 352 machines in play when the government didn't give us a lot of notice again to say open up on the 1st of June. And that was primarily the Alfresco, the bowls lounge, and the bar. Now, that made a great result for us because I guess even as soon as we opened back, I think a lot of venues, including ourselves, experienced a bit of a sugar rush. But then it didn't just stop there. We had to, obviously, we couldn't do everything we wanted to, and it took time to get other parts of our gaming floor up and running. And it hasn't had its own setbacks. I mean, 1st of July was great. We had the restrictions ease a little bit more, but then we had the crossroads, you know. So even though we started to have increased machines on the floor, there was local impacts and basically kind of some of the things that kept our customers coming back to a certain degree. But yeah, basically, I guess that key date was the 1st of June. Being ready for that, as we know, the government has not given us any notice on most of these either easing or implementing of restrictions. And where we currently stand at the moment is we still have 11 machines currently in storage, and we want to get them out on the floor. Have we ever been during this period you know, under machined, and on, I guess we've all experienced, you know, greater revenue or returns from gaming. No, not really, but I guess we want to create what they're used to, have the product available, and I guess we're only looking to it. It's not going to hurt us to have it on the floor now, or wait a couple of months. I guess I should talk about the rest of the club and just not focus on gaming, what we did there. Look, I wish I added a few more pictures of the rest of the club as well, but I guess we're all been facing with the fact of, yeah, we have to spread out our furniture. You know, I guess, how do we deal with it not making it look so vacant? We've got to deal with the queuing, you know, queuing inside the building, queuing outside. They're all the challenges we face. With most of with beverage, catering, even functions, we've opted for just to accept the reduced capacity. You know, at the moment, we actually do see, you know, catering and beverage having quite a significant downturn, and I think it's just that fear of COVID is just obviously keeping them away. And even in our area, when there has been a few hot spots popping up, it's something that we're going to have to review, because, you know, will it be financially viable in 6 months, 9 months time? If we are operating at capacity, are we still going to be happy with those figures? You know, probably not. But we've had plans in place about, well, how do we extend out? You know, we take more space. We have to be ruthless to a certain degree. So not ideal, but, you know, we're happy with the capacity at the moment. You know, and basically, unfortunately, it's a hard world for catering and beverage. So I guess social distancing in the future, the actions we took had varying levels of investment. It really made a difference to us, although, and there was a level of risk, but there've been great results, you know, and I don't think we would ever go back and say you know, that was the wrong decision to make. 100% correct, but we still learned, you know, we've learned more for the future. We're kind of the opinion that, yeah, when social distancing removes, you know, we won't just rush back to our pre-COVID gaming installation. I think we've learned a lot. We also are very cautious about listening to what our customers like. I think Gary mentioned it right at the beginning. You know, they're growing to become accustomed to the space. So even if, you know, social distancing is completely wiped out and there's no concern of it ever coming back, you know, will we go back to having 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters between machines? Probably not. Are we going to maintain 1.5? Well, that's a question of space. But there's got to be a happy medium, and I think we need to listen to what our customers want. And, you know, it does create an exciting opportunity, I guess. The social element of gaming, which we're not having at the moment, will that become more enticing, specifically if there's social distancing? It's making us think about our future gaming rooms. You know, every time I spoke about it, there was a cost of getting power and data, and basically everything comes through the roof for us. So in future game rooms, you know, if not cost inhibiting, having a completely all our power and data underneath the floor, and basically a raised floor where we can move machines as required. But also, you know, I guess the question we have to ask ourselves, is our room going to be big enough? The one we're planning to build is pretty much finished, right, in terms of the design aspect. But is that right now, with social distancing and what our players may end up wanting, you know, 3-4 years down the track? So I hope I've, you know, shared a little bit of what we did, and hopefully there's something in it. But I guess, yeah, thank you, and I guess thank you for having me, Gary.
Thank you, Andrew. I do have a question for you. This is from me. I haven't got a question yet from any of our participants, but did you have to undertake any structural changes, move any walls to create your spaces, or was it all about the furniture and the machines?
Yeah, so good question. With the South Alfresco, it had glass walls, like basically floor to ceiling glass panels that were separating our alfresco area and indoor. Fortunately though, those plans were already well underway in terms of how we were going to deal with that, because of basically we were making adjustments to that area to cater for our future smoking area being developed in place of what we were losing. So that was significant, but best time to do it is when you had no one in the club. So as long as financially you were happy to expend that money, it actually was a great opportunity to really not disrupt our gaming patrons by right in the middle of the gaming area knocking down walls and whatnot. Alternatively, other than that, very minimal. We've just moved airlocks around to maximize floor space in terms of going out to smoking areas. But yeah, we've been lucky in that sense, using dead space or reclaiming from other purposes without any major structural changes.
Good, Andrew, thank you for that. Lindsay, can you tell me, I mean, moving a wall, I mean, is that, I mean, depending on whether it's a load-bearing wall, I suppose, is that a viable, you know, affordable option for clubs if they want to open up, you know, create more space so they can achieve the social distancing?
Gary, I think in the last 15, 20 years, we've gone away from having clubs, and I think, Andrew, I do remember, Andrew, that restaurant on the first floor at Cabravale. I do remember how useless it was, and we've had plenty of those things. So over the last 10, 15 years, maybe more, we've actually opened up a lot of spaces in clubs, and we've designed a very open footprint. Now that, in some respects, can be to our benefit in this way, where we don't have to worry about moving walls, or in some cases, especially once you get outside the big clubs, you get to the smaller clubs, and if you get to the bowling clubs and the golf clubs and some of the country clubs, moving walls can be very, very difficult, and that's because the buildings are older, and without being rude, a lot of the buildings, as they've developed over the many years, have been undertaken ad hoc, and so a lot of the ways in which they've moved forward over those last years have created some of these immense problems that we now see. It isn't hard to move a wall. It isn't without complications to move a wall, and it isn't without cost. But at the end of it, I like the way Andrew's approached it with Cabravale, and is that they've looked at it from this is what it will cost us, this is what it can give us, therefore we've got our money back. It's the old accountancy of ROI, Gary. So I would suggest to people before they move a wall that they look at all the options that Andrew put on the table. I think it's impressive that we're going away from having rows of poker machines, that we're trying to have these little modules that Andrew's shown. You can do a lot with that. You can actually distance the people properly with that. You don't have to have 8, 10 machines in a row, which we've been getting away from anyway. Then I think you can make the decision about whether you want to, you know, knock a wall down and move a space. In Andrew's case, he's had, I think he's got 450 machines. He's got 439 on the floor. That's pretty damn good. Is it necessary to have that many machines? That's a question that you need to ask, needs to be asked internally. But I think in all of it, and Andrew touched on it, and certainly so did Daniel, Andrew's testing the water at the moment and driving things in slightly different ways to find some answers out. He's very, very fortunate to be able to do that. Not a lot of clubs can. But one of the things, and I think I've said this to you, Gary, is that I draw an analogy between what you put on the wall in the way of a big TV screen and what you can have at home. If what I've got at home is only what the club offers, why do I want to go out in these troubled times? So what you're trying to offer people down in the club, is that this is a place that you can come to with comfort and certainty and security, and enjoy the whole atmosphere of the club, and not feel in any way, shape or form that you're in danger. And I think this is what Andrew's talking about. This is what Daniel's talked about. It is important for all of us to understand that the older generation that frequent our clubs are probably the most vulnerable of all. And we need to be conscious of how we treat them. That's why I've said initially, they come to the front door and that's the first impression they get of you and your club. If the front door's a mess and the front door doesn't care about you, they can assume the rest is a mess. So I like what Andrew's trying to do out there. I think it's really wonderful, but you can see he's got footprint to expand into. And I think one of the things that Andrew mentioned is that they've been going through a redesign process out there at Cabravale. I have to have a chat to him about that. And they're looking to do something, but they've got flexibility to make that change. And that's really, really important, because we're dealing with COVID-19 now, and I guarantee you in 10 or 15 years, we'll have another issue, and we'll have to readdress it again. And if anyone has been around the world looking at casinos, and I know the club industry has, and they've got themselves to America, the thing that they will have noticed is that they actually build these big structures and they put these lightweight walls internally, and therefore they can move things around very freely as they wish over a period of time. Andrew and his crew can do that. But unfortunately in Australia, we've sort of built them out of bricks and mortar and said we don't want to move them for 50 years. Well, that's the wrong attitude. In this world we live in, it's more like a stage set, and I think that's important.
And referring to you, Daniel, I think we don't have to have walls. We can use furniture to create the same sort of barriers. In one of your slides, you had that large sort of lounge with a wall of pot plants behind, which I thought was very impressive and very attractive. So can you talk a little bit more about the way furniture can provide that greater flexibility?
Yeah, I think it can. Unfortunately, sometimes it still doesn't take the social distancing away. So decorative screens can give you the privacy. But I think what I was referring to there was creating that space where there felt like there was a divide without it being a wall, was what that little planter box gave behind the lounge. Good point Lindsay said before, actually. I just want to touch on that again, Gary, before I come back to that. The other thing I've noticed some clubs are doing is for peace of mind and comfort, you've got to make sure your venue's comfortable. So those who don't spend time on ensuring you've got comfort level, not just in your seating, it's in the ambience, it's in the cleaning, it's in the personnel, it's in the uniforms. You know, that entry into your club now has changed. So therefore, how well are our people trained at that process? Is it seamless? Is there a long, frustrating queue? And even when you get into the dining experience, I've noticed this in a lot of the clubs, are putting more time into people just going around cleaning more often, which is just a peace of mind. It's the subconscious saying, I'm in a good space, whether it's the smell or the accessibility of the sanitizer, the wipes, etc. I think that's really important. And doing that same thing to the furniture, ensuring that that's always wiped over when people are in between meals. That peace of mind, I think, goes a long way. And Gary, just finishing on your point, I think you can get quite creative for not a lot of money by using screening, planter boxes and so on. It's also to move people around your venue. Some places there is areas that are just the go-to. Well, how do I create more go-to area? And I would say client feedback now, although you mightn't want to hear it all the time, I think it's very, very important. Finding out what they want, because they'll then say that they care about me here. They listen to me. And some of the suggestions may be 20% good, but at the same time, the implementation might be simple. It could be easing something through. It could be changing the access to an area. And I think getting feedback from your patrons this time is really, really important.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you all very much for very good presentations, very informative and good advice for venues. So I'll just put up our slides to show, and as I said to you, the contact information for each of our presenters is there, their email addresses or their mobile phone numbers. If you would like to contact them, I'm sure but all of them, Lindsay, Daniel and Andrew, would all welcome your contact if you have any further questions following the presentations today. And next week, in 2 weeks' time, our next Evolves webinar is on the issue of cashless gaming or a digital wallet, and how far are we progressed and where are we at with that topic. So that'll be the topic in 2 weeks' time. And reminding you all that all of our Evolve webinars are available on our website if you wish to watch any of the past ones. Today's webinar has been recorded and it will be distributed to everyone who registered and all our contacts. So any of you can watch the presentation again and you can look back on some of the other previous webinars that are available on the website. But finally, thank you all very much, everyone who joined in to listen, and thank you to our three presenters. It's been very much appreciated, and good afternoon.